Claire, I really need your help with this business pitch, Derek said, spreading papers across our kitchen table. His eyes had that desperate look I'd been seeing more often lately. Numbers filled the pages, revenue projections, startup costs, investor promises. Something felt wrong. I picked up the financial breakdown. The math didn't add up. Derek, these profit margins seem too high, and this timeline looks unrealistic. I pointed to a section where he claimed he'd make back the investment in 6 months. He snatched the papers away, laughing awkwardly. That's what accountants are for, babe. I'm the big picture guy. The dismissive tone stung. I'd helped manage our household finances for 8 years. I knew numbers. I'm just trying to help, I said quietly. I know. He kissed my forehead, but it felt cold. This opportunity is huge, Claire. Life-changing. I just need to get all the details perfect before I present it. That night I lay awake thinking about those numbers. In my work as a museum curator, authenticity mattered. You learned to spot the fakes. Derek's business plan felt like a beautiful forgery, impressive on the surface, but wrong underneath. 2 weeks later, Derek's phone rang at midnight. He grabbed it quickly, whispering as he walked to the bathroom. Yeah, I can talk. Give me a second. I pretended to sleep, but my heart raced. Who called at midnight about business? Through the thin walls, I caught fragments. The timeline. She doesn't know. Keep it quiet for now. When he came back to bed, I asked, everything okay? Just a vendor from Miami, different time zone, you know? He climbed under the covers, but his body stayed tense. The next morning, I checked his phone while he showered. The recent call was saved as just M. No last name, no company, just the letter M. Who's M? I asked when he came out, towel around his waist. Derek froze for a split second. What? The call last night, it's saved as M. Oh, that's Mike. Mike Rodriguez. The vendor I told you about. He grabbed his phone and deleted the call log. I keep it simple since I call him so much. But I'd worked with vendors before. They had full names, company listings, professional contacts, not single letters saved in phones like secret codes. The neighborhood block party should have been fun. Instead, I spent it watching Derek charm every woman there. He had this way of making people feel special, intense eye contact, genuine seeming interest in their lives. Mrs. Patterson from down the street giggled like a teenager. Derek, you're terrible. Still got it after all these years of marriage. Other wives laughed and agreed. But something in their tone bothered me. It wasn't just harmless flirting. It felt like they knew something I didn't. I was getting another drink when I overheard 2 neighbors by the fence. Is Derek still seeing that yoga girl from Boca? One asked. I heard she moved closer, some kind of life coach now. My hand tightened around my plastic cup. Yoga girl? Life coach? I'd never heard Derek mention anyone like that. When I walked over, they stopped talking and smiled brightly. Claire, how are you? We were just discussing the weather. But their faces had that guilty look people get when they're caught gossiping. I spent the rest of the party watching Derek, noticing how he checked his phone constantly and stepped away to take calls. There's been suspicious activity on your account, the customer service representative explained. We've temporarily locked your access for security. I stared at my laptop screen. Our shared credit account showed an error message. But I use this account every week. What kind of suspicious activity? I can't give specifics over the phone. You'll need to come in with proper identification. Derek was in the shower, so I couldn't ask him immediately. But when I mentioned it at dinner, he barely looked up from his plate. Yeah, I got the same message. Probably just a fraud alert. You know how paranoid banks are these days. Should we go in together tomorrow? I'll handle it. I have to go to the bank anyway for business stuff. The next day, I tried logging in again. Still locked out. But I managed to see one recent transaction before the screen went dark. Ocean View Resort, Tampa. 2 guests. Weekend rate. I'd been at a museum conference in Atlanta that weekend. Derek said he was staying home to work on his business plan. The charge was for 2 people. My hands shook as I stared at the screen. Claire, I need to talk to you about something important. Derek's voice was serious as he sat across from me at our dining room table. Remember that business opportunity I've been working on? I nodded, remembering the flawed numbers from weeks ago. The investors are ready to move forward, but they need more capital commitment from me personally. I need to take out a business loan for $65,000. My stomach dropped. That's a lot of money, Derek. I know, but here's the thing. With my credit history, I need a co-signer. Someone with stable employment and good credit. He reached across the table and took my hands. I need you to co-sign with me. Derek, I don't know. That's our entire savings account worth of debt. His grip tightened. Claire, this is our future. If I don't get this loan, I'll lose the house. The missed mortgage payments will destroy us. Tears formed in his eyes. I've been trying to protect you from how bad things really are. What missed mortgage payments? The museum doesn't pay you enough. My consulting work has been slow. I've been covering the gaps, but I can't anymore. Fear crept into my chest. Show me the mortgage statements. I handle all that stuff. The point is, this business will save us. It'll be ours, Claire. Our future together. The chest pain started small, just a tightness when I thought about the loan. But it grew worse each day. I'd wake up feeling like someone was sitting on my chest. Derek was gone constantly now. Investor meetings, he'd say, kissing me goodbye before disappearing for hours. He'd come home late, smelling like expensive perfume that wasn't mine. Are you okay? My friend Jessica asked when we met for coffee. You look exhausted. Derek wants me to co-sign a huge loan. I'm just stressed about it. Jessica frowned. Actually, I meant to tell you something. Derek approached my husband about borrowing money last month, asked for $15,000 for some business emergency. My coffee cup rattled against the saucer. What did you tell him? We said no. We don't lend money to friends. But Claire, why would he need to borrow from us if he's about to get a big business loan? I stared out the coffee shop window, watching people walk by in their normal lives. Nothing felt normal anymore. Derek was borrowing from friends, asking me to co-sign massive loans, disappearing for hours at a time. That night, I had my first panic attack. It felt like drowning while sitting perfectly still. I woke up alone. Derek's side of the bed was cold, like he'd never come home. His phone went straight to voicemail, not just busy, but disconnected completely. Panic set in as I searched the house. His clothes were gone, his laptop, his important papers, even his favorite coffee mug. Like he'd planned this disappearance carefully. I called the bank immediately. The loan was approved 3 days ago. The loan officer confirmed. The funds were transferred to your husband's business account. 3 days ago? But I never finished the paperwork. Ma'am, we have your completed application and signatures here. My head spun. I didn't remember signing final papers. Maybe I'd signed so many documents that I'd lost track. The phone rang while I was staring at Derek's empty closet. Is this Mrs. Morrison? A cheerful voice asked. Yes. This is Bella's Flowers. I'm calling to confirm Mr. Het Morrison's delivery to Marissa Dean at 425 Ocean Drive, apartment 3B. The roses and champagne package for today. I nearly dropped the phone. I'm sorry, who? Marissa Dean, the delivery for your husband Derek Morrison. I'd never heard that name in my life. Marissa Dean led me down a rabbit hole I wasn't prepared for. Her social media showed a perfectly curated life. Beach photos, motivational quotes, expensive yoga clothes. Her bio read, Wealth Empowerment Coach. Helping ambitious people manifest their dreams. She was beautiful in that effortless way that made you hate yourself. 28 years old, living in a beachfront condo in Boca Raton. Her latest post showed champagne glasses against an ocean sunset with the caption, New Beginnings with My Soulmate. Posted yesterday. The day Derek disappeared. I scrolled through months of her photos, looking for any sign of Derek. There, 3 months ago. A man's hand holding hers, cropped so you couldn't see his face. But I recognized Derek's wedding ring. Her coaching website was impressive. Testimonials from clients who'd transformed their financial lives. Packages starting at $5,000. A fancy rented office space in a high-end building. I called the building's management company, pretending to be interested in renting. Oh, that's sweet. Yes, the lease was just paid in full for the year. Unusual, but the tenant paid cash up front. Very expensive, $12,000 per month. $12,000 per month. That was my loan money. Derek had used my credit to fund his mistress's fake business. Mrs. Morrison, I need to be honest with you, my lawyer, Sandra Williams, said across her mahogany desk. Legally, you're liable for this entire $65,000 debt. But he lied to me. He used the money for personal expenses, not business. Unfortunately, unless you can prove fraud in court, the bank doesn't care how the money was spent. You signed as a co-borrower, which makes you equally responsible. I felt sick. What about divorce? Wouldn't that split the debt? Sandra reviewed the paperwork Derek had submitted to the bank. Her face grew grim. This is problematic. He listed you as an inactive co-founder of Morrison Consulting LLC. According to this, you're a 50% owner of the business that received the loan. I never agreed to that. I never even heard of Morrison Consulting. But you signed here. She pointed to a signature that looked like mine. This document makes you legally responsible not just for the loan, but for any business debts or obligations. The room spun around me. Derek hadn't just stolen money. He'd trapped me in a legal web that made me responsible for everything. There is one option, Sandra continued. If you can prove he forged your signature or coerced you into signing, we might have a fraud case. The call came while I was trying to figure out how to afford groceries. An unfamiliar number with a Florida area code. Mrs. Morrison, this is Capital Recovery Solutions. We're calling about your overdue payment on loan number 4427B. I'm sorry, what loan? The $15,000 business loan from Sunshine Credit Union. You're listed as the personal guarantor. Payment was due last month. My hands went numb. I never signed for any loan from Sunshine Credit Union. Ma'am, I have your signature right here on the guarantee form. Would you like me to fax over a copy? 20 minutes later, I stared at a faxed document with my name and what looked like my signature. But I'd never seen this paperwork before in my life. The signature was close, but the C in Claire was slightly different from how I actually wrote it. Derek had forged my signature. I called Sandra immediately. This is excellent news, she said. Forgery is a felony. If we can prove he forged one signature, it calls all the others into question. How do we prove it? We'll need a handwriting expert. It costs money, but this could be your ticket out of this mess. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. Derek had made a mistake, and mistakes could be exposed. The forensic accountant Sandra recommended was expensive, but she found things I never would have thought to look for. Your husband has been very busy, Maria Santos said, spreading documents across the conference table. He filed tax returns for Morrison Consulting for the past 2 years, claiming significant business expenses. But the business just started this year. According to these returns, the business has been operating since 2022. Look at this. He claimed a home office deduction using your address, business travel expenses, and equipment purchases. The total deductions are over $40,000. I studied the tax forms. They showed income that Derek never mentioned to me, business expenses for trips I thought were personal, and deductions for equipment I'd never seen. The really interesting part, Maria continued, is that he used your social security number for some of these filings. You're listed as the business's tax preparer and accountant. I've never prepared taxes for anyone. I don't even do our personal taxes. Derek always handled that. Yet here's your signature, certifying these business returns as accurate. She pointed to multiple pages marked with my forged signature. This is federal tax fraud, isn't it? Maria nodded grimly. Both the fake business deductions and using your SSN without permission are serious crimes. His CPA might have unknowingly helped him commit fraud if Derek provided false information. I found Marissa's phone number on her coaching website. My heart pounded as I dialed, but I forced my voice to stay calm. Empowerment coaching, this is Marissa. Hi, I'm calling about relationship coaching. A friend recommended you. Wonderful. I specialize in helping people manifest healthy, abundant relationships. What's your situation? I'd practiced this conversation. I'm recently separated from my husband. He was very controlling about money, and I'm trying to rebuild my financial confidence. Oh, honey, I completely understand. I actually just helped someone through a very similar situation. Sometimes you have to leave everything behind to start fresh, you know? Really? That gives me hope. Absolutely. My current partner just went through a divorce earlier this year. It was ugly. His ex-wife was so jealous and controlling, but now he's free to build the life he really wants. My grip tightened on the phone. How long ago was his divorce finalized? Just a few months ago. He told me they'd been separated for over a year, but she fought the divorce because she didn't want to lose his money. I hung up before she could hear me crying. Derek had told his mistress we were divorced. While he was begging me to co-sign loans and talking about our future together, he was telling her he was already free. Maria's investigation revealed Derek's most clever deception. He'd opened a business checking account using my maiden name, Claire Hoffman, listing me as the primary account holder. "Look at this," she said, pointing to bank statements I'd never seen. "Morrison Consulting has been receiving payments into this account for months, but the account is technically in your name, so legally, you're responsible for any tax obligations." The statements showed deposits I couldn't explain, payments from companies I'd never heard of, marked as consulting fees and project management. Where did this money come from? That's what we need to find out. But Claire, this creates a huge problem. If the IRS decides to audit Morrison Consulting, they'll come after you personally because you're listed as the account holder. I felt trapped in a maze of Derek's lies. Every document we found made my legal situation worse, even though I'd done nothing wrong. "There's one more thing," Maria said carefully. "Derek listed a P.O. box in Tampa as your business address. That's important because Florida has different laws about business debt and personal liability." "What does that mean?" "It means he might have been planning this for a long time. By establishing business residency in Florida, he could potentially avoid some of the financial consequences when this all falls apart." Derek hadn't just betrayed me, he'd systematically planned my destruction while protecting himself. The P.O. Box discovery led to an even bigger revelation. Derek had listed 425 Ocean View Drive, Tampa, a completely fake address, as our marital residence on the loan applications. "This is significant," Sandra explained. "By claiming Florida residency, he was trying to take advantage of their homestead exemption laws. If someone sued him personally, his primary residence would be protected from creditors. But we've never lived in Florida." "Exactly, which means he committed loan fraud by lying about his residency. But it also means he was planning to establish a new life there." I looked up the fake address online. It was a vacant lot near a beach development. Derek had literally made up an address where he planned to disappear with Marissa and my money. "The good news," Sandra continued, "is that this level of deception strengthens our fraud case. He didn't just steal money, he created an elaborate scheme to hide assets and avoid responsibility." That evening, I drove past Derek's real plan. The P.O. Box was in a shipping store near Tampa's airport. Easy access for someone planning to disappear quickly. I sat in my car, watching people come and go with their packages and letters. Normal people doing normal things. How had my life become this nightmare of forgery and fraud and stolen money? The panic attack hit me in the grocery store. One minute I was comparing cereal prices, the next I couldn't breathe. The fluorescent lights seemed too bright, the aisles too narrow. My chest felt crushed. "Ma'am, are you okay?" A kind voice somewhere above me. I was sitting on the floor, hyperventilating. A store employee and several customers had gathered around me. Someone called an ambulance. At the emergency room, a nurse named Patricia sat with me while they ran tests. "Has anything stressful happened recently?" she asked gently. I started to give my usual answer, that everything was fine, but instead, the truth poured out. The loan, the forgery, Derek's disappearance, the debt that would destroy me. "Honey," Patricia said when I finished, "what you're describing sounds like financial abuse. Have you heard that term before?" I shook my head. It's when someone uses money and credit to control and manipulate their partner, taking out loans in your name, hiding financial information, creating debt you're responsible for. That's abuse. The word hung in the air between us. Abuse. I'd always thought abuse meant physical violence, but Derek had attacked my financial life, my credit, my future. He'd weaponized my trust and love against me. "Yes," I said out loud for the first time, "I think I've been abused." Coming home from the hospital, I felt different, clearer. Patricia had given me a pamphlet about financial abuse recovery, and reading it was like looking in a mirror. I spent the next 3 days organizing everything, every document, every phone call, every suspicious transaction. I created a timeline of Derek's deception, starting with the midnight phone calls and ending with his disappearance. Sandra was impressed when I brought her the organized evidence. "This is exceptional work, Claire. With this documentation, we can build both a civil case for recovery of your money and a criminal case for fraud." "What's the difference?" "Civil case gets your money back and clears your credit. Criminal case puts him in jail." Her smile was sharp. "We can file both." I stared at the neat piles of evidence. Months of lies and manipulation, reduced to paper trails and phone records. Derek thought he was so clever, but he'd left a trail that led directly back to him. How long will this take? Civil cases move faster than criminal ones. If we file everything this week, we could have preliminary hearings within a month. For the first time since Derek disappeared, I felt like I had some control back. He'd underestimated me, and now he was going to pay for that mistake. While researching Derek's fake business, I discovered something interesting. Morrison Consulting LLC had never been properly registered in Georgia where we lived. But Derek was already using the name and claiming business expenses. I filed paperwork to register Morrison Consulting LLC myself, listing my real address and my legitimate credentials as a business owner. Since the name wasn't taken, it was perfectly legal. Then I sent Derek a cease and desist letter through Sandra's office, demanding he stop using the business name that now legally belonged to me. "This is brilliant," Sandra said. "By claiming the business name, you're essentially taking control of his fraud. Any debts or obligations he created under that name now have to come through you." What does that mean practically? It means if he tries to open accounts or sign contracts using Morrison Consulting, he's now stealing from your legitimate business. It adds another layer of criminal charges. I also discovered that Marissa was advertising herself as the Director of Client Relations for Morrison Consulting on her LinkedIn profile. Since I now own that business name, she was falsely representing her employment. I sent her a professional cease and desist letter as well. Let her explain to her coaching clients why she was suddenly unemployed. The bank manager was surprisingly sympathetic when I presented my evidence of Derek's fraud. "Mrs. Morrison, this is clearly a case of misrepresentation," she said, reviewing the documents. "If your husband used false information on the loan application, we have grounds to demand immediate full repayment from him personally." But I still co-signed. "Yes, but under false pretenses. Look here, he claimed this was for equipment purchase and business development. Instead, he used it for personal expenses and to fund another person's lifestyle." She made several phone calls while I waited. Finally, she returned with good news. "We're flagging Derek Morrison as fraudulent in our system. We'll also freeze any other accounts associated with him or Morrison Consulting." Does that help me? It means he can't open new accounts with us or with any banks that share our fraud database. It also means we'll work with you on restructuring this debt while we pursue collection from him directly. Leaving the bank, I felt lighter than I had in months. Derek's financial house of cards was starting to collapse, and I wasn't going down with it. Researching Marissa's coaching business revealed another opportunity. Her website claimed she was a certified wealth advisor and licensed financial consultant. But when I checked with the state licensing board, no Marissa Dean was registered. I filed a complaint with the State Board of Financial Advisors, documenting her false claims about certification and licensing. Practicing financial advice without proper credentials was illegal. I also discovered she was operating her business without a proper license in Florida. Her coaching packages cost thousands of dollars, but she had no business license, no professional insurance, and no legal right to call herself a financial advisor. My complaint triggered an investigation. Within a week, she received a cease and desist order demanding she stop claiming professional credentials she didn't have. "This is perfect," Sandra said. If she was giving financial advice to Derek about the loan scheme, she could be charged as an accessory to fraud. Really? Think about it. A fake financial advisor coaches someone on how to defraud their spouse out of $65,000? That's conspiracy. I smiled, imagining Marissa's panic when she realized her perfect beach life was built on crimes that could send her to prison. Tax season brought the final piece of Derek's downfall. I submitted detailed reports to both the IRS and Georgia's state tax board. documenting all the fraudulent business deductions Derek had claimed. Maria helped me prepare a comprehensive package showing false business expenses claimed over 2 years, fraudulent use of my social security number, fake business address and residency claims, income hidden from marital assets. This triggers an immediate audit, Maria explained. When the IRS audits Morrison Consulting, they'll discover all the fake deductions and fraudulent filings. Derek will owe back taxes, penalties, and interest on everything. How much money are we talking about? Based on the false deductions, probably around $30,000 in back taxes, plus penalties that could double or triple that amount. The IRS moved faster than I expected. Derek's assets were frozen within 3 weeks of my filing. His bank accounts, any property in his name, even his car, all frozen until the tax investigation was complete. He can't access any of his money now, Sandra explained. If he's living with Marissa, she's supporting him entirely. I wondered how long their perfect beach romance would last when Derek became a financial burden instead of a sugar daddy. Derek's return was as dramatic as his disappearance. He burst into Sandra's office during our meeting, demanding to work things out. "Claire, this has gone too far," he said, his usual charm replaced by desperation. "We can fix this. Just drop the charges and we'll figure out the money situation." Sandra calmly buzzed her assistant. "Please call security." "I have a right to talk to my wife." "Actually, you don't," Sandra replied. "Claire has a restraining order against you, and you're currently trespassing." Derek turned to me, his eyes pleading. $65,000, Claire. That's all this is about. I'll pay it back, I promise. What about the tax fraud? What about forging my signature? What about Marissa? His face crumpled. "That's over. When the money ran out, she made it clear our relationship was temporary." Security arrived. 2 large men who escorted Derek out while he shouted promises and apologies. "Judge Martinez will see us in 20 minutes, Sandra said calmly, ready to serve him officially. In the courthouse, I watched Derek's face when the bailiff handed him divorce papers and a formal fraud complaint. He aged 5 years and 5 seconds. "All rise," the bailiff announced. Derek's legal nightmare was just beginning. "Mr. Morrison," Judge Martinez said sternly, "you're facing serious criminal charges. Given the evidence presented, I'm setting bail at $50,000. Derek's lawyer whispered frantically in his ear. With his assets frozen, Derek couldn't make bail. He was going to jail unless someone helped him. During the recess, Derek's lawyer approached Sandra. "Mrs. Morrison, my client is prepared to make a deal. He'll assume full responsibility for the $65,000 loan in exchange for dropping the criminal fraud charges." Sandra looked at me. "We discussed this possibility. He admits fault in writing?" I asked. "Full admission of fraud, forgery, and financial deception. Plus he takes over all loan payments immediately. And if he defaults on the payments, then the criminal charges are automatically reinstated." It was tempting. Getting out from under the debt would restore my credit and my peace of mind. But I wanted Derek to face real consequences for what he'd done. "I'll consider it," I said finally. "Draw up the papers." Derek's relief was visible when his lawyer told him. He thought he was getting away with everything again. But I had one more surprise for him. The lease on Derek and Marissa's beach condo was paid through my cousin Rachel's property management company. I discovered this during my investigation and quietly bought the property through a trust. When Derek and Marissa couldn't make their next month's rent, since his assets were frozen, they received an eviction notice. But we paid a year up front. Marissa apparently screamed at the property manager. "That was the initial lease. Your boyfriend signed a month-to-month extension when the first lease expired. Payment was due last week." Through Rachel, I learned that Derek had been lying to Marissa about his financial situation. He'd told her the asset freeze was temporary and that he had backup accounts she didn't know about. When she realized he was actually broke, Marissa packed up and left for California, where she had family. Derek found himself alone in an empty apartment with an eviction notice and no money. "The property manager says he's been asking about payment plans," Rachel told me. "Apparently, he's gotten a job at a warehouse, but it barely covers food." Derek, who used to boast about his business acumen and financial success, was loading trucks for minimum wage and couldn't afford rent. 6 months after Derek's disappearance, I stood in my new office overlooking downtown Atlanta. The sign on the door read, Phoenix Financial Literacy Center, empowering women through financial education. My legal settlement with Derek and the recovered funds had given me enough money to start a nonprofit helping women who'd experienced financial abuse. We offered free credit repair, legal advice, and education about protecting your financial identity. Mrs. Morrison? My assistant knocked softly. Your 3 o'clock appointment is here. The woman in my office looked familiar. After a moment, I recognized her. She was the bank manager who'd originally approved Derek's fraudulent loan. I lost everything, she said quietly. When the bank investigated what happened with your husband's loan, they discovered I'd approved several other questionable applications. I was fired, and now I can't get another job in banking. The irony wasn't lost on me. The person who'd enabled Derek's fraud had become another victim of financial abuse, this time by her own employer who scapegoated her for systematic problems. We can help, I said gently. Financial abuse comes in many forms. She started crying. I don't know how to rebuild. I've worked in banks my whole career. That's exactly why we need you here. Who better to teach women about loan fraud than someone who's seen it from both sides? 1 year after Derek's betrayal, I hosted a dinner party for my closest friends. We sat on my new apartment's balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. To peace, I said, raising my glass. Not revenge, but peace. My friends, Jessica, Sandra, Maria, and Patricia from the hospital, clinked glasses with me. They'd supported me through the darkest period of my life. Have you heard anything about Derek lately? Jessica asked carefully. He's still working at the warehouse, still making payments on the loan. The criminal charges are suspended as long as he keeps up with the payments. And Marissa? Moved to California. Started a new coaching business under a different name. I shrugged. She'll probably scam someone else eventually. My phone buzzed with a news alert. I glanced at it and nearly dropped my wine glass. What is it? Sandra asked. Derek was arrested, I said, reading the alert. For falsifying federal documents, something about fake veterans' benefits from 2 years ago. The group went silent. I hadn't filed those charges. The government had discovered Derek's crimes independently, probably during their investigation of his tax fraud. Claire, Patricia said gently, how do you feel about that? I thought for a moment, watching the last light fade from the sky. I feel free, I said finally. I didn't have to destroy him. He destroyed himself. Derek had been so focused on escaping the consequences of betraying me that he'd never noticed the other crimes catching up with him. Karma hadn't needed my help after all. I raised my glass again. To new beginnings.